Në hapës për forumin e shoqërisë civile Tirana 2023. Unë jam Tirana, jam mikpritja juaj e inteligjencës artificiale. Ju mirëpres të gjithëve sot. Moto sot të këtë vit është për forumin është shkyçja e progresit e ardhmja evropiane për Ballkanin Perëndimor. Në këtë moto, në muajt e fundit, shoqëria civile, media, akademia dhe vendimarrësit kanë diskutuar në takime tematike, kanë marrë pjesë në aktivitete publike dhe janë angazhuar në advokim në kryeqytetet e BE-s për të ngritur zërin për angazhimin evropian të Ballkanit Perëndimor. Këtë vit forumi i shoqërisë civile është mbështetet financiarisht nga fondacionet për shoqërinë e hapur të Ballkanit Perëndimor. Ftoj zotin Andi Dobrushi, drejtorin e Ballkanit Perëndimor, të flasë për rrugëtimin që na ka sjellë të gjithëve këtu. Zoti Dobrushi, fjala është për ju.
Mr. Ardot, good morning, welcome everyone. This was
Kjo është edhe për mua është e çuditshme, do të them realisht, domethënë, por është me vend për vendin ku jemi. Jemi në piramidë që kjo piramidë ka një rëndësi të madhe dhe një kuptim të madh për ne, sepse në fillim të viteve 90, para viteve 90 na detyronin të vinim këtu me zor, sepse ishte memoriali i diktatorit, por tani ka fituar një rëndësi të madhe, moderne, sepse është, do të shihni pas meje, shihni qendrën Tumo dhe kam përshtypjen që kryetari i bashkisë do të flasë shumë më tepër.
Innovation technology, basically youth center, bringing together like a completely different set of people, ideas, innovation, which we so much need in this country, but also in the region. When we're coming here, many people were asking me, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? I mean, I think we all are ready, not only for this event, but I think for much more. It's going to be, thank you, thanks. This will be very intense 2 days. Some people are concerned about the intensity of the agenda, but we have made sure that this agenda will have less people to talk in the panels and way more discussions, because we are here not to tell you what to do. We've been discussing that for the 6 months, like in the working thematic groups, and behind me when you entered you saw lots of all the working thematic groups. Most of you are here and we're going to hear a lot in the discussions, but the idea was to talk less, be courageous actually to talk less. It takes courage to talk less, and to be brave to do more. I think that's why we are here, and I will not exhaust and tire you about the importance of the Berlin process and why it is so important. We know it's the 9th year. I think we've had plenty of opportunities almost every year, but the pandemic period, to tell to each other how important the Berlin process is, and what is its relevance and what it holds for the accession process, for the perspective of the region, in the integration process of the region in the EU. We know that, but this year we wanted to do it differently. We said it last night, we mentioned it a bit. Basically, this is Berlin process coming home. It comes in the region, and I think this talks volumes about the agency that the region wants to have in this process. The agency, not only the region, not only the governments, but most importantly, also civil society, think tanks, who have been for the past 30 years fighting their own battles, sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding, but being there, being present, and pushing the agenda much more than also the governments, many times, I have to say. So for us, this is a very, very important moment, which defines a bit also our future. We've been 30 years into this process. We've been talking together for 30 years. But this is also the moment of thinking like, okay, what we'll do next, and I think much of the discussions that we have thought that would be inspired today were not on what we need to do, but how do we do it? How we implement it? Basically, the main ingredients of this activity, when we discussed it also with our partners in the beginning, were like, how do we make this work together more actionable? How do we do our recommendations more implementable? How does the civil society and think tanks define their role in a very, very different context? I mean, no need to say. It's just enough to open the news and to see that the crisis and many crises are looming in the region and beyond. I don't need to delve in that because there is a need for a sense of optimism today, So I think that's very important. But it comes also with the acute awareness that we are not immune to this crisis, and we have to deal with those, and we have to basically think together how we proceed. Of course, values are very important. We draw lots of inspiration and lots of power on the values, but also the need to balance the new geopolitical realities call also for a need in rebalancing also this and rethinking our position, when it comes to the future. This year's event is very much focused on the economics, and I think that speaks also volumes. So we'll see, the working thematic groups range from a variety of issues. We'll start, of course, with the geopolitics and security. Behind me, like you have all the working thematics groups, also the path of the countries, so far in the EU, but geopolitics, energy, green transition, mobility, migration, dynamics of enlargement. These are a few of the topics that we'll discuss these 2 days. I have to say that we made sure that lots of work went into this ahead of this day. We didn't see this day as a coming together and discussing it from the very beginning. We've been into this with the working thematic groups for the 7 months into the process. They have put lots of energy. There have been a very, very broad consultation with not only among ourselves, because we didn't want this to become a conversation of the like-minded, but we also wanted this to become a conversation also with people who think differently, also with the governments, also with the other actors, also with the experts, also with the businesses. So I think this, and that's why we hold over 21 sessions, like hybrid and online, and physically, in all the capitals of the region. And they came out with concrete recommendations which served as platform for also our advocacy. There were, I think, let me check, 36 advocacy meetings in Berlin and Brussels. So that tells you that when we come today, we have done our homework, because many times we're told, we have to do our homework and we have to do it well. I think this time we have to be proud as civil society because we have done it well. And these 2 days should serve us basically to read the signs, and we're reading those well, and come up with a new step, with a new vision, with innovative ideas, which I think we'll have plentiful of those in these next days. I want to conclude with one thing. We've been hearing a lot about, this is a moment, just use the moment, let's grab the moment. I think we know what the moment is. Let's try to define it. I think this is our task, So I thank you so much for coming here. It's been a real pleasure last night. I think we will have lots of things to do in the next 2 days. And besides talking to each other and getting to know each other more and thinking of new ideas which will help us to set up a process and continuous process after this summit. We don't see this as a one-time thing. That's very important. We hope that out of these meetings in the next 2 days will shape our joint work for the future to come in the region, and hoping that this will be a stepping stone in the efforts of the civil society organizations, think tanks in the region, but also a next very strong signal also to the future generations that will come, also to the youth particularly, who we see it as the main generator of ideas and efforts. I think most of us have been in this story for some time. So I think youth and innovation would be a great input in this effort together. So thank you. I wish all to us, of us today, like to have a very great event, successful one. And I hope that you will not enjoy only the event, but also Tirana. We have ordered a very good time for you, like the weather is perfect still, like I think only on Monday we'll have rain, so we're lucky, like for these 2 days. We changed that too, you see, so I think, and enjoy the hospitality of this country, and yes. I don't need to do a moderation because there is the avatar coming. We're joking with the mayor. We said, like, that's not the most beautiful representative girl from Tirana, but I think she will do as an avatar. I said that, okay.
The Berlin process in 2014 as a platform for high-level cooperation and dialogue between representatives of the Western Balkans and their peers in some of the EU countries. Since then, the process evolved to also include Western Balkans public administrations, EU institutions, international financial institutions, civil society, youth, and the private sector. In this context, Mr. Manuel Cerezen, the German Federal Special Representative for the countries of the Western Balkans, will address us today through a video message.
Dear participants of this year's Civil Society Forum of the Berlin Process, I extend my best regards and I deeply regret that I cannot be with you today and greet you in person. First of all, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the organizers of this year's Civil Society Forum, which is the Open Society Foundation, the Hellenic Foundation for Europe, and Foreign Policy, with support of the Cooperation and Development Institute, for organizing this integral part of the Berlin process. The journey of this forum has nothing been short of extraordinary. Originally, it was launched in 2015 in Vienna and then completed in 2019 in Poznan. It has just served as a catalyst for many political discussions. Your expertise plays an essential role in supporting reforms in our countries, and you add important issues to the agenda. Over the course of the next 2 days, you will complete 2 extensive forums and encompass more than 7 thematic sessions relevant to the future of the Western Balkans. These sessions will be the home of ideas, where passionate voices from civil society, public representatives and various stakeholders will merge in constructive and inclusive dialogue. This dialogue will enable us to deliberate on critical issues of our time: economic development, energy, digitalization, green agenda and mobility. The German government and I personally are committed to supporting your countries in their efforts to face these challenges and in the end come together in a common future within the European Union. One element of that is our continuous effort to the Berlin process. The Berlin process wants to bring concrete benefits to the citizens in the region and aims to strengthen regional cooperation in different areas. All 6 Western Balkan countries belong to Europe. We want all 6 Western Balkan countries to one day also belong to the European Union. You are part of Europe and part of the European family. This is why we are committed to the enlargement of the EU. For this, we expect a clear commitment to the implementation of the necessary reforms from all governments in the region and expect them to address common challenges of our time, such as energy transition, economic development, rule of law, democracy, and social welfare. The Berlin process is intended to help create the necessary foundations for this, even though cooperation is sometimes made difficult by bilateral issues and politicization. It is important for the Western Balkans to also work on green transition. It is vital to ensure energy security, mitigate climate change, reduce public health problems related to pollution, and to stimulate green economic growth. Without increased efforts in this field, the gap to the EU will only widen for the region. Reconciliation and conflict resolution in the Western Balkans is essential future where shared understanding and cooperation are starting to replace historic grievances. The path to lasting peace can only be paved with dialogue, compromise, and the commitment to build bridges instead of barriers. We want jointly reach agreements that will bring the Western Balkan states closer together. physically through mobility agreements, politically through enhanced cooperation, digitally through common rules on roaming charges, and socially through the creation of cross-border programs such as the regional youth organization RICO. The solutions and insights emerging from the Civil Society Forum will serve as important contributions for our work, for a more resilient, prosperous and inclusive future for the region and beyond. Let us remember that the strength of your societies lies in your ability to engage in dialogue, exchange ideas and work together toward a common goal, like the European integration. My hope is that this is embracing the strengths of the European Union one day, when your skills and your abilities are also supporting us inside the European Union in getting even better. I look very much forward to your concrete contributions, to policy discussions that will come from these forums, and I'm looking forward to get a good report and to try to follow your advices as far as possible. Thank you.
Open Society Foundation's Western Balkans were not alone in this enormous endeavor to organize this year's forum. This year's forum is a result of a close collaboration with the Hellenic Foundation for European and Foreign Policy from Greece and the Cooperation and Development Institute from Albania. I have the pleasure of inviting Mr. Armakolas, Associate Professor, Senior Research Fellow and Head of Southeast Europe Program at Aliamep to make a statement.
Thank you. I'm Ioannis Armakolas, on behalf of the Hellenic Foundation for European and Foreign Policy, better known as Aliamep, in Athens. I would like also to welcome you after Andi Dobrushi to this important yearly event. Almost a year ago, less than a year ago, we teamed together with CDI and, of course, Open Society Foundation's Western Balkans to put together this important gathering of the civil society and the think tanks of the region. But we thought this year, this time, it's not going to be only the civil society and think tanks from the region, but also, as the Western Balkans are integrating with the rest of Europe, it will be a meeting, a gathering, and also an opportunity for consultations also with the EU, with organizations from EU member states. In that context, we tried, in a sense, to innovate, but at the same time build on the successes, on the lessons learned from previous years, and try to work with hundreds of civil society organizations and members from the Western Balkans and the EU member states in putting together ideas for the future of the Western Balkans and ideas for the future of the integration of the Western Balkans in the European Union. As Andi mentioned earlier, we have put together 7 working groups, 7 thematic working groups, and we try to give a different twist this year to the thematic working groups, so maybe I can give you a couple of information about how we worked, about the methodology of the work of the thematic working groups. First of all, we expanded the thematic scope, but we did that with a well-designed and streamlined framework in order to produce meaningful contributions to policy thinking. So this year we wanted to actually contribute specific ideas to policy thinking. We expanded the membership also of the organizations involved in the various consultations and deliberations. Hundreds of organizations and individual analysts were involved in discussions, in consultations. And we also, differently from previous years, actively engaged with policy and decision makers in order to have them part of the process. We started from the beginning. It was one of the intentions of this year's Civil Society Forum to get feedback, to get information, to get engagement from those who actually implement policy, design and implement policy. And we had, as Andi mentioned earlier, several policy advocacy visits early on, but also towards the end of the process in Berlin and Brussels, and also in the Western capitals, Western Balkan capitals. We also tightened the time frame for the deliberations of the thematic working groups this year. We wanted all the ideas, the drafts, and the recommendations to be delivered early on so that we get feedback from other analysts, from civil society, from policymakers, from decision makers. We are proud that our working groups very early on produced these ideas and these drafts, and these have been circulated in Brussels, in Berlin, in other capitals. We got feedback, we improved, we revised the versions of what will be produced, what will be presented today and tomorrow. All this was part of the process we designed from the beginning. And also, we introduced a very rigorous internal process of quality control. We had a kind of a sounding board, both within ELIAMEP and also the other organizers of the Civil Society Forum. And I think what we produced this year is thematic reports which are shorter, punchier, and I think better tailored to meet the requirements of policy making. And that was from the beginning the intention of this year's Civil Society Forum. Not just to produce something that will be drafted, produced, read by think tanks, but drafted, produced for policymakers and also contribute to thinking about policy making. I think through that process, and I encourage everybody to read the reports that are produced, what we, I think, debunk as myths, or maybe rather put in context some of the concerns, is twofold. One is something that is very often heard, that there is not enough capacity in the Western Balkans in order for the accession process to be accelerated and all six countries of the Western Balkans to join the European Union very soon. I think we have shown through the work of the thematic working groups that there is enough intellectual, conceptual, ethical support for the EU integration process by all the civil society organizations and the think tanks, but at the same time there is critical support to the governments. There is knowledge-based, principle support to the accession process, not a support to the governments without conditions. And another myth we debunk with the work of the thematic working groups is also something that is very often heard in Brussels, in Berlin, and other capitals, is that the Western Balkans care only about the small problems and disputes in the region, and the world has bigger issues, bigger problems, bigger policy priorities. The thematic dimension, the thematic approach of this year's Civil Society Forum will show that the Western Balkans have understanding, knowledge, ideas and recommendations for the bigger global agenda that the European Union is pursuing, for the green transition, for energy, for mobility, for all the problems that are global, and the European Union, of course, is very much involved in tackling. And the Western Balkans also have ideas, also have recommendations, and the Western Balkans will be part of a European Union approach to these bigger global problems. I think it's very important that this message comes from Tirana this year. This message comes from the first time that a Western Balkan country holds the presidency of the Berlin process. I will close by thanking the Albanian government, of course, for trusting ELIAMEP, the Hellenic Foundation for European Foreign Policy, and giving us the opportunity, together with CDI and the Open Society Foundations, to do this process this year. I would like to thank all the organizations, civil society, and think tanks involved in all the deliberations, hundreds and hundreds of people involved in the various discussions and exchanges. And of course, Andi Dobrushi, I cannot say it in the way that the lady said it here, Dobrushi or something like that, and Open Society Foundations Western Balkans for their support, and looking forward for the rest of the weekend. Thank you very much.
The pyramid is the inspiration behind the visual identity for the Civil Society and Think Tank Forum Tirana 2023, and it feels right to kick off the forum right here. But as such, the pyramid is not just a visual symbol, it also reflects the transformation and changes the Western Balkans is capable of. Built in 1988 as a museum dedicated to commemorating the communist dictatorship regime, Today, the building has been transformed into a regional hub for technology and innovation, looking towards the future. To welcome us to Tirana and the Pyramid, I have the pleasure of inviting Mr. Arian Vellier, the Mayor of Tirana, to address us. Please welcome Mr. Vellier.
I'm looking very forward to the moment she applies the acquis communautaire. Then I think we'll see the power of AI in the region. But, you know, like the saying goes, everything has been said, but not by everyone. So here I am to conclude your morning welcome. Last night you were in a royal palace where no royal ever slept. And today you're in a pyramid where no pharaoh ever came. Because,
You should
but we were very bad with refrigeration in the 80s. So when he passed away in 1985, we could not realize the dream of having another Ho Chi Minh and Lenin mummified in the pyramid. So the pyramid became from a mausoleum to a museum. And then from a museum it became NATO headquarters. And then after NATO headquarters during the Yugoslav wars, it became a big club called, appropriately, The Mummy. And then after The Mummy, it just became a big slide when most of us lost our jeans, sliding down. And I think it's a metaphor of this city, it's a metaphor of the Balkans. Sliding down and letting things go, it's a lot easier than actually climbing up and going to the top. So I think this metaphor is very telling of the transformation, the metamorphosis of this city. So welcome to Tirana. It's been a delight. Andi was very worried because we had so many events going on. The city was overwhelmed by tourists. Luckily, a lot of the rooms that were freed by the Czech fans were taken by you guys. But I'm hoping you leave with a better result than the Czech team. But jokes aside, I'm truly delighted that you are in Tirana. And I think this is proof, the city is living proof of what the Western Balkans is capable of. Yes, we started behind, and yes, we suffered a lot, but we're also very creative. And in that sense, we're very resilient. I think that's the right word, resilient. When I became mayor 8 years ago, the city conducted something called the Atlas of Economic Complexity with the Center for International Development out of Harvard, Ricardo Hausmann and the whole team. And the city at the time, 8 years ago, was doing 25% of the economy generated was shirts, so textile. The other 25% was shoes, mostly for Gucci and Armani in Italy. Fast forward in 8 years, 25% of the city's economy is now tourism, and the other 25% is ICT. So it can change within 2 mandates the face of a city, not only in the public sphere and the urban setup, such as the Pyramid and other public places, but also in the way we do economy, think of jobs of the future. We used to get paid 250 euros a month. This is jobs that anyone in Asia, in bigger cities, in Karachi, in Lahore, in Jakarta, in Hanoi, can do probably cheaper and faster. So we said, well, what can a small country do? What can a city of our size do to punch above the weight? And I think this is the right word, to punch above your weight. We are small, but we can always elevate ourselves in a different category. But speaking of boxers, Michael Tyson said, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. Then your plan means nothing. So the question is, what is our plan? And who punches us on the face? Now, I was meant to comfort you, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to disturb you rather than comfort you. We live in a crazy world right now. I think many of you were in Davos, and a key word from Davos was the polycrisis. We live in the year of polycrisis. When I became mayor, my first year, it didn't rain for 182 days. And all the experts said, you know, don't worry, Mr. Mayor, because once in 100 years you have stuff like this. And then the second year, it rained so much, it felt like I was living in Venice. And again, you know, after the floods, the experts said, don't worry, Mr. Mayor, once in 100 years, we have floods like this, like Noah's Ark and whatnot. You know, the third year, we just had endless bushfires. I remember it was like fires everywhere around the city. But there were also fires in Australia and California. So everybody said, don't worry, Mr. Mayor, once in 100 years, we have fires like this. And then it snowed in Tirana, you know, in the Mediterranean. All the trolls started saying, Mr. Mayor, where are the snowplows? I said, I cannot have a procurement for snowplows in a place that has snow once every 100 years. And then, you know, the next year, of course, we had a massive earthquake in 2019. The last big earthquake was in 1905, so literally after 100 years, you know, we had a destruction of huge chunks of the city, Kombinat, Kino Studio, big neighborhoods that completely collapsed. And again, you know, the experts said, look, once in 100 years, the tectonic plates have to stretch. So we have stuff like this. And then, of course, we have a war in Europe. Again, once in 100 years. For all of this stuff, we said never again. Never again on the climate change, never again on the war. But you know what? Now stuff that used to happen once in 100, and of course then we had the pandemic, which was literally after 100 years of the Spanish flu. So a lot of the stuff that used to happen once in the lifetime of a grandfather or a grandmother is now happening within a mandate of a mayor or a prime minister or a member of parliament. So not only the poly crises are happening now, but they are all compacted in a very short period of time. So this is a time for reflection. And you know, I loved hearing from our Greek friend. I was 23 during the Thessaloniki summit. I was so excited. I came from Rwanda to Albania because I wanted to change things here. And in some extent, you know, I'm happy. We've done a few things. But in 2003, one of the excitements that brought me here was the Thessaloniki summit. And the Thessaloniki summit said, within this decade, we're going to be in the European Union. Well, I'm not 23 anymore, as you know, and you can do the calculation. But it's been 20 years since. And I admire everybody's optimism. I'm a chief optimist myself. But we really need to make sure that this time it's for real. I had my deputy mayor, who had just become a minister, in an EU format yesterday. We were talking about the College of Europe and a few other things. They said, well, at least now we feel like the sailors who can at least see the land, see the promised land where the ship is anchoring. Well, you have to be careful. There's this phenomenon in sailing called Fata Morgana from King Arthur. Fata Morgana is the illusion that the land is much nearer than it actually is. So I really hope I am wrong this time, and I haven't become the next cynic in the region. But you know, what can you guys do? So I want to provoke also this conversation. Since you know, we were promised some recommendations and some food for thought. So here's my first provocation. After now the war in Gaza and the conflict of Israel, is Ukraine already number 2 in the agenda? And is Kosovo and Serbia number 3? Are we, you know, like the pyramid in the old days, are we sort of sliding in the priority agenda? How do we keep, you know, being in the pole position of public interest and policy interest? I think that requires some discussion. And I think in this year of polycrisis, it seems like the crises are competing with each other, which one takes the pole position rather than the solutions. You know that very famous joke, which is a famous Albanian joke. You know, there was this little rabbit on the forest. And the rabbit was very, very afraid, living the life of paranoia all the time. And, you know, the rabbit goes to the bar in the forest and everybody says, you have to talk to the owl. He works for the Open Society Institute. He's been an expert for you know, many years. I am sure the owl has a solution. So the little rabbit goes to the owl and says, look, I need a solution. I can't live my life with fear, running away from everything. And the owl says, look, my friend, I have a solution for you. You have to become a lion. Because if you become a lion, you're the top of the food chain. No one messes with a lion. So the rabbit is so excited. You know, he finally has a recipe for success. And he says, can I ask a follow-up question, since you are an expert and you're all smart people, you went to all the great schools, you've attended every seminar. The owl says, of course. What's the follow-up question? And the owl says, how exactly do I become a lion? And this is where the owl says, my friend, I'm in charge of strategic thinking, not project implementation. So I don't have the luxury to be in charge of strategic thinking. I have to do project implementation. But you are in charge. You are the owls. So I'm expecting that all the owls here, you know, give us some feedback, give us some food for thought, give us some concentrate of strategic thinking that we can then be project implementers of. Now, to conclude, I am concerned about the region. I'm optimistic about my city, about my country, but it's not enough. You know, one of the scoops will be the College of Europe, the other one will be a coding academy. So we're doing well here, but it's not enough, because neighbors matter. If you don't think neighbors matter, ask the Israelis, ask the Ukrainians. Neighbors matter. So I am happy and delighted and proud of the neighbors that we have. None of our neighbors wants to start a war, at least so I believe. So in that regard, neighbors matter. And then, you know, you live in a small apartment block, and if you have a jerk on the weekend trying to drill a hole in the wall, it completely upsets your day. So even in a small, you know, mundane setup, neighbors matter, let alone in geopolitics. So I am proud to call you neighbors and friends, and I'm very proud that you are here in Tirana. Please come back often and stay longer. Thank you very much.
Let's all thank the speakers with another round of applause. Our next destination is the Rodner Hotel, where we can continue the constructive dialogue within the civil society and think tank forum Tirana 2023. But before we do so, it's time for a family photo. We are taking the photo on the stairs in front of the main entrance. Thank you all. Tirana, over and out.